Britain is sleepwalking into an employment catastrophe that could destroy its economy within the next 5 years. Right now, at this very moment, there are 9.4 million working-age people in the UK who aren't working, aren't looking for work, and have essentially vanished from the economy altogether. That's more than the entire population of London, and the numbers are getting worse every single day. What you're about to discover isn't just another economic statistic. It's the untold story of how millions of Britons have been pushed out of the workforce, why the government's attempts to fix it have spectacularly backfired, and how this crisis threatens to collapse Britain's entire economic system. If you want to stay informed about the latest developments in the UK economy and housing market that directly impact your future, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to Economy Reporter right now, because what's happening to Britain's workforce affects every single one of us. The scale of Britain's employment crisis is so staggering that most people simply cannot comprehend it. We're not talking about traditional unemployment here. That figure sits at around 1.4 million. We're talking about something far more sinister: economic inactivity. These are people who have completely dropped out of the labour force, and the numbers are absolutely terrifying. Since 2020, the UK has seen an explosion in economic inactivity that defies all historical patterns. While other major economies recovered their workforce participation after the pandemic, Britain went in the opposite direction. The economic inactivity rate has surged to 21.8%, meaning more than 1 in 5 working-age adults aren't participating in the economy at all. But here's where it gets truly shocking. A record-breaking 2.8 million people are now on long-term sick leave, the highest number ever recorded in British history. That's not a typing error. 2.8 million people who say they cannot work due to health conditions. To put that in perspective, that's more than the entire workforce of Wales. Meanwhile, there are over 1 million job vacancies sitting empty across the country. Employers are desperate for workers, offering signing bonuses, higher wages, and better benefits, yet they still can't fill positions. The hospitality sector alone has 130,000 vacancies. The NHS has 150,000 unfilled posts. Construction companies are turning down contracts because they don't have enough workers. The situation has become so severe that major corporations are now recruiting directly from prisons, offering jobs to inmates before they're even released. Amazon, Timpson, and several major construction firms have started prison recruitment programs because they literally cannot find workers anywhere else. Think about that for a moment. Businesses are so desperate for staff that they're hiring convicted criminals still serving sentences rather than waiting for applications from the general public. When restaurant chains are offering £3,000 golden handshakes for kitchen staff and still can't fill positions, you know, something has gone catastrophically wrong with the labour market. The most disturbing aspect of this crisis is the mental health epidemic that's keeping millions out of work, and the numbers are absolutely staggering. Mental health conditions have become the single largest cause of economic inactivity in Britain, with over 500,000 people citing anxiety, depression, or stress as their primary reason for not working. That number has doubled in just 5 years, and it's accelerating at a rate that should terrify anyone who cares about Britain's future. Young people are particularly affected, with 1 in 4 18 to 24-year-olds reporting mental health conditions that prevent them from working or studying. But this isn't just about people feeling stressed or sad. The NHS mental health services have completely collapsed under the pressure. The waiting list for mental health treatment has reached 1.9 million people, with some patients waiting over 2 years just for an initial assessment. In certain regions, the wait for autism or ADHD diagnosis is now over 4 years. People who desperately want help, who want to get better and return to work, are trapped in an endless queue while their conditions worsen and their employment prospects evaporate. The system has created a vicious downward spiral where untreated mental health problems lead to job loss. Job loss worsens mental health, and the lack of treatment ensures people never recover enough to work again. The data reveals something even more troubling. Areas with the longest NHS waiting times have the highest rates of economic inactivity. In parts of the northeast, where mental health waiting lists exceed 30 months, economic inactivity has reached 28%. Compare that to London, where waiting times are under 6 months and inactivity is at 18%. The correlation is undeniable. The collapse of mental health services has created economic dead zones across Britain, where entire communities have essentially given up on employment. What makes this particularly devastating is that many of these people want to work. Surveys show that 65% of those economically inactive due to mental health issues say they would return to work if they could get proper treatment. That's potentially 325,000 workers locked out of the economy simply because the healthcare system has failed them. The economic cost is astronomical. Mental health-related worklessness now costs the UK economy £28 billion annually in lost productivity, benefit payments, and reduced tax revenue. The situation facing Britain's young people is nothing short of a generational disaster that's been completely ignored by mainstream media. Right now, there are 900,000 young people aged 16 to 24 who are NEETs, not in education, employment, or training. These aren't lazy teenagers sitting at home playing video games. These are young adults who've been systematically locked out of the economy by impossible barriers and contradictory demands that would have been unthinkable just a generation ago. Consider what today's young people face when trying to enter the workforce. Entry-level positions routinely demand 3 to 5 years of experience. Graduate schemes that once accepted anyone with a degree now have acceptance rates lower than Oxford University. A recent analysis found that the average entry-level job posting in London required 2.7 years of prior experience in the exact same role. How can someone get their first job when every first job requires previous jobs? The internship system has become a cruel joke. Major companies offer unpaid internships lasting 6 months or more, essentially requiring young people to work full-time for free while somehow paying London rents of £1,200 per month. Only those with wealthy parents can afford to take these positions, creating a two-tier system where career opportunities depend entirely on family wealth. One study found that 72% of internships in creative industries and 66% in finance are unpaid or pay below minimum wage. Those who can't afford to work for free are permanently excluded from entire career paths. University graduates face an even more depressing reality. The average graduate now applies for 92 jobs before receiving a single interview. Competition is so fierce that companies receive hundreds of applications within hours of posting. Morgan Stanley received 90,000 applications for 90 graduate positions last year. That's 1,000 applicants per job. The Big Four accounting firms collectively received 420,000 applications for 6,000 positions. These aren't normal levels of competition. They're impossible odds that crush the spirits of even the most determined young people. Social media has created another devastating problem that nobody talks about. Young people are constantly bombarded with success stories of 22-year-old entrepreneurs making millions, influencers living luxury lifestyles, and peers seemingly achieving instant career success. This creates paralyzing anxiety and unrealistic expectations. Why take a minimum wage job when social media tells you that you should be a CEO by 25? The result is that many young people either hold out for perfect opportunities that never come or give up entirely, believing they've already failed at life before it's even begun. Here's the part of Britain's employment crisis that politicians desperately don't want you to understand. The benefits system has created a mathematical trap that makes work economically irrational for millions of people. This isn't about laziness or people choosing not to work. It's about cold, hard mathematics that would make any rational person choose benefits over employment. The numbers are so shocking that when government economists first calculated them, they reportedly thought there was an error in their models. Take a single parent with 2 children living in a 2-bedroom flat in Manchester. If they work 40 hours a week at minimum wage, they'll earn approximately £1,750 per month after tax. But here's where the trap begins. They'll immediately lose £850 in housing benefit, £430 in universal credit, and £180 in council tax support. After paying £1,200 for childcare, they're left with negative £710 per month. That's right, they would literally be £710 worse off every month by working full-time than staying on benefits. This isn't an edge case or unusual situation. It affects an estimated 2.3 million households across Britain. The universal credit taper rate creates an even more insidious problem. For every pound someone earns, they lose 55 pence in benefits. Add income tax and national insurance, and the effective marginal tax rate for someone moving from benefits to work can exceed 75%. That's a higher tax rate than millionaires pay. A person working part-time might take home just £2.50 for every additional hour they work. When you factor in transport costs, work clothes and lunch expenses, many people literally lose money by working additional hours. The childcare crisis has made everything exponentially worse. The average cost of full-time nursery care in the UK is now £14,836 per year, more than many people's entire take-home salary. In London, it reaches £22,000 per year. The government's free childcare hours only cover term time and require top-up payments that many providers demand. Parents face the absurd situation where working to pay for childcare costs more than the childcare itself, creating a mathematical impossibility that traps families in benefit dependency. But the most controversial aspect is what critics call the illness dividend. Someone signed off sick with long-term conditions can receive up to £690 per month in personal independence payments, plus £390 in employment support allowance, plus full housing benefit and council tax support. That's a package worth over £2,000 per month tax-free, equivalent to a salary of £32,000 before tax. Compare that to minimum wage work at £22,308 per year, and the incentive structure becomes crystal clear. The system literally pays people more to be sick than to be healthy and working. The corporate exodus from Britain has accelerated into a full-scale evacuation that's destroying entire categories of employment, and the speed of this collapse is breathtaking. Since Brexit, over 440 financial services firms have moved operations out of the UK, taking 7,600 jobs directly and eliminating tens of thousands of support positions. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. Major manufacturers including Honda, Panasonic and Dyson have shut down UK operations entirely. Sony, Airbus and Nissan have scaled back dramatically. Each factory closure doesn't just eliminate direct jobs, it destroys entire local economies built around these employers. The tech sector bloodbath has been particularly brutal. Meta, Amazon, Twitter and Microsoft have collectively cut over 12,000 UK positions in the past 18 months. Startups that once flocked to London's Silicon Roundabout are now choosing Berlin, Amsterdam or Dublin instead. Venture capital investment in UK tech has plummeted 43% while increasing in every other major European economy. The promise of global Britain has turned into global rejection, with companies explicitly citing Brexit uncertainty, visa complications and regulatory chaos as reasons for leaving. But technology isn't just causing companies to leave, it's eliminating entire job categories at a terrifying pace. Artificial intelligence has already replaced 340,000 UK customer service jobs. Self-checkout machines have eliminated 120,000 retail positions. Automated warehouses have cut logistics employment by 30%. These aren't future predictions. This has already happened. The Bank of England estimates that 7 million UK jobs are at high risk of automation within the next 5 years. That's 1 in 5 of all current jobs simply vanishing. The gig economy was supposed to be the solution, offering flexibility and opportunity. Instead, it's become a dystopian nightmare of exploitation that's crushing workers' spirits and destroying any concept of career progression. There are now 4.4 million gig economy workers in Britain, but calling them workers is generous when many earn less than £5 per hour after expenses. Uber drivers working 60-hour weeks report take-home pay below minimum wage after fuel, insurance and vehicle costs. Deliveroo riders cycling through winter storms for £2.90 per delivery. Amazon Flex drivers sleeping in their vans to make routes profitable. 0 hours contracts have infected the entire economy like a cancer. 1.3 million people are now trapped in these arrangements, never knowing if they'll have work tomorrow, unable to get mortgages, unable to plan their lives. Sports Direct workers on 0 hours contracts report being sent home without pay if they're 5 minutes late. Care workers spending unpaid hours travelling between clients. The psychological toll is devastating. Studies show 0 hours workers have anxiety and depression rates 3 times higher than permanent employees. The compound effect of corporate exodus, automation and gig economy, exploitation has created something unprecedented in British history. An entire generation with no concept of career progression, job security, or employment rights. When every job is temporary, every contract is 0 hours, and every company might leave tomorrow, why would anyone invest in skills or training? The very concept of a career has become extinct for millions of British workers. The economic mathematics of Britain's employment crisis are so catastrophic that government economists have started using the term death spiral in internal documents. The current situation costs the UK economy £15 billion annually in direct benefit payments to economically inactive people. But that's just the beginning. Lost tax revenue adds another £23 billion. Reduced consumer spending removes £31 billion from the economy. Healthcare costs for long-term sick add £18 billion. The total economic impact exceeds £87 billion every single year, more than the entire education budget. But here's the truly terrifying part. It's accelerating. The Office for Budget Responsibility projects that if current trends continue, economic inactivity will reach 11 million by 2030. The tax burden on the remaining workers would need to increase by 42% just to maintain current public services. That means basic rate tax rising to 34%, higher rate to 58%. It's economically impossible. The working population simply cannot support this level of dependency. The demographic catastrophe makes everything worse. Britain's worker-to-pensioner ratio has collapsed from 4.1 in 2000 to 2.8 today. By 2035, it will reach 2.1. That means every 2 workers supporting 1 pensioner plus their share of children, sick, disabled, and unemployed. The state pension alone will consume 8.1% of GDP by 2040. Add in healthcare for an ageing population, and there's literally no money left for anything else. The NHS already consumes £180 billion annually and is still collapsing. What happens when that figure doubles? International competitiveness has evaporated. Britain's productivity is now 16% below the G7 average and falling. Foreign direct investment has collapsed 43% since 2016. The pound has lost 25% of its value. Credit rating agencies have downgraded UK debt twice, with more downgrades threatened. The City of London has lost its status as Europe's financial capital. When international investors look at Britain's employment figures, demographic trends, and productivity stats, they see a country in terminal decline. The compound effect creates a doom loop that economists say may be irreversible. Fewer workers means less tax revenue. Less tax revenue means worse public services. Worse public services mean more people get sick and leave the workforce. More sick people means higher benefit costs. Higher benefit costs mean higher taxes on remaining workers. Higher taxes drive more businesses and workers abroad. It's a mathematical certainty that this ends in economic collapse unless something dramatically changes. The government's attempts to solve Britain's employment crisis have been so spectacularly incompetent that they've actually made everything worse, and the evidence is absolutely damning. The Way to Work scheme, launched with great fanfare and £3.6 billion in funding, promised to get 500,000 long-term unemployed back into work. The result? Just 73,000 people found jobs, and 61% of those were back on benefits within 6 months. That's £49,000 of taxpayer money spent per temporary job created. The the scheme was quietly abandoned, but not before wasting billions that could have been spent on actual solutions. The Restart scheme, another flagship programme costing £2.9 billion, has been even more pathetic. Despite forcing benefit claimants to attend mandatory sessions under threat of sanctions, only 11% of participants found work lasting more than 3 months. The contractors running these schemes, mostly large corporations with government connections, received £14,000 per person regardless of outcomes. Leaked documents revealed that one contractor spent more on executive bonuses than on actual training programs. These companies literally profit from failure, collecting billions while parking desperate people in pointless workshops about CV writing and positive thinking. The disability benefit reforms have created a humanitarian disaster that's driving people to desperate measures. The replacement of disability living allowance with personal independence payments was supposed to save money and reduce fraud. Instead, it's cost £4.8 billion more than the old system, while subjecting genuinely disabled people to humiliating assessments that deny benefits to people with terminal cancer and severe mental illness. The assessment process, outsourced to private companies, has a 73% error rate according to tribunal judgments. That means 3/4 of decisions are wrong, forcing sick people through years of appeals while their health deteriorates further. The push to raise the retirement age represents the ultimate admission of failure. Unable to get working-age people back into employment, the government's solution is to force elderly people to work longer. Plans are already in motion to raise the state pension age to 68 by 2037, with internal documents discussing 71 by 2050. This means someone starting work today at 18 would need to work for 53 years before receiving a pension. The government is literally planning to work people until they drop rather than fix the actual problems destroying the labour market. What makes this particularly infuriating is that every single one of these failed schemes was predictable. Economists warned that benefit sanctions don't create jobs when there are no jobs to take. Mental health experts explained that forcing sick people into work assessments would worsen their conditions. Labour market analysts demonstrated that raising retirement ages when youth unemployment is sky high is economically illiterate. But the government ignored every warning, pushed ahead with ideological solutions to mathematical problems, and wasted billions making everything worse. The conclusion to Britain's employment crisis story is as stark as it is undeniable. We're watching the controlled demolition of an entire economy, and nobody in power seems capable or willing to stop it. 9.4 million working-age people economically inactive, 2.8 million on long-term sick leave, mental health services collapsed, young people locked out, benefits that pay more than work, corporations fleeing, automation eliminating what's left, and a government whose only solution is to force 70-year-olds to keep working because they've given up on everyone else. This isn't a temporary blip or a rough patch that will sort itself out. The structural forces creating this crisis, demographic collapse, technological displacement, globalization, financialization, are accelerating. Britain is attempting to run a 21st century economy with 20th century solutions, while sliding back into 19th century levels of inequality and desperation. The feedback loops are now so deeply embedded that conventional policy interventions can't break them. Tax rises drive out workers. Benefit cuts create more sickness. Training schemes train for jobs that don't exist. Every solution becomes another problem. The uncomfortable truth that nobody wants to acknowledge is that Britain's economic model is fundamentally broken. An economy built on financial services, property speculation and consumer debt cannot function when millions can't work. Millions more won't work for poverty wages, and the rest are taxed into oblivion to pay for it all. The country that invented industrial capitalism is now demonstrating what post-capitalist collapse looks like in real time. When historians write about Britain's decline, they won't focus on Brexit or COVID or any single event. They'll identify this moment when 9.4 million people disappeared from the economy and nobody could bring them back, as the point of no return. The questions we should be asking aren't about tweaking tax rates or adjusting benefits. They're about whether Britain's economy can survive in its current form. What happens when economic inactivity reaches 12 million? When the tax burden becomes mathematically impossible? When the last major employers leave? When the NHS finally collapses entirely? These aren't hypothetical scenarios for 2050. At current rates of deterioration, they're possibilities within this decade. The employment crisis isn't just another economic problem to be solved. It's an existential threat to Britain's survival as a developed nation. And right now, nobody has any realistic plan to stop it.